Balanced radio.
We give you a reason to stay.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Well, good morning and welcome to TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go on the world's greatest radio. You are now in touch with The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is radio the way it should be heard. Today's program is going to be a real good program. We're going to be on the fourth area of people activity, which is labor. We will have Mr. Fuller address that, and we will accept your calls at 1-877-932-9766 or your Gmails at 7MrBobby. That's the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com. We will get to those shortly. Mr. Fuller is the author of the fine books, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. The revised expanded edition is out, and also a word guide, and we will have Mr. Fuller discuss that. But before we do, listen, we need you to do this. As you know, we have entered a new year, and we want to continue to bring the second hour of the compensatory concept. But as usual, we need your help. And that help is in the form of donating. Now, when you go to the TalkTainmentRadio.com homepage, there is a donate button right there. Now, I wouldn't suggest to you how much you should donate, but if this program means a great deal to you, and we are on from 9 a.m. until 11 a.m. Eastern Time, you should hit that donate button, any amount that you want to. And once you hit it, it goes in, your contributions are tax deductible, and you will help fund the second hour of the compensatory concept with Neely Fuller Jr. Now, for those who have already donated, I'd like to say thank you for that and for your continued support. We really appreciate that. But hit the donate button, and all the information will be on the page for you to do your thing so we can keep the second hour of the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. and Mr. Bobby as co-host on the second hour. All righty, out the way. All right, now let's go to the book here. The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. And we will have Mr. Fuller speak about the book. Mr. Fuller, good morning, and how are you?
Good morning, and I'm still learning.
You are still learning. Before we get into the fourth area of people activity, which will begin on page 131 of the revised expanded edition, could you please briefly speak about your books and where the people can get your books?
Well, the book is called The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, and those words are explained in the book. United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. But basically, what that title means, that very long title, means that the book is directed toward individual victims of white supremacy. What an individual person can do in all areas of activity, in what I call the 9 basic areas: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And some people have said sometimes that, well, Fuller, you should have added one more, and that's health. Health is very important. But I said the 9 will do, because if you do the correct things in all of the other areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, counter-war, if you do and say the correct things in each one of those areas of activity, then that is health. Health, the word health, the first few letters in the word health, means heal. Heal, H-E-A-L. You're healing. And so that's what health is. If you have any type of disorder and whatnot in any area of activity, economics, education, and you have plenty of disorder in all these areas of activity, labor, law, politics, religion, the world is not a healthy place. So if we do the correct things, do and say, everything is about doing and saying, on an individual basis, each and every day, the individual has more control over what he or she does each and every day, each and every minute, than they do over anybody else's actions, speech and action. So if you're doing the healthiest thing that you possibly can do each and every day, wherever you happen to be as an individual person, then when you multiply that to all of the people on the planet, then you have a healthy world, because everything starts with the individual. You can't start with somebody else other than yourself, because you are yourself. You have more control over what you can do than you do over what somebody else can do or will or won't do. And you don't have very much control over yourself under the system of racism, but that's the only control you do have, really, the actual control. So the book is directed toward the individual person who is the victim of racism. And the complementary title of the book is called Textbook Workbook for Thought, Speech, and/or Action for Victims of Racism. And that would be the non-white people of the planet. You can get the book by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com.
All right. Let's get into the on topic today is labor, but if you have any questions on any other subjects, you may ask Mr. Fuller that. In other words, you don't have to stay on topic, but that is what we are going to focus on for the next 5 weeks is labor. Let's go to the phone lines right now. Line number 1, you are now on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question? Line number 1, you are now on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question? Okay, line number 1. Okay, line number 2, you are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller. What is your question?
Hey, good morning, Mr. Fuller, Mr. Bobby. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
All right. So it slightly touches on labor. This is a busy period in the industry I work in, and I noticed, I laugh when I look, it's completely dominated by white people. So my question is, in an effort to become universal man, should one of my goals be to dominate but not mistreat others?
Yes. Yes, definitely. You don't try to dominate or mistreat anybody. The goal of the entire book, of the entire concept, the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept, is to replace all of the non-justice that is going on in the entire universe among all peoples everywhere in all areas of activity with a system of justice. What we have is the most powerful political and religious system in the world that has ever appeared among the people of the planet, and that is the system of white supremacy, sometimes referred to as racism. It is a very non-just system. It's designed to be non-just. It's intended to be non-just. So what do you mean by non-just? You mean people cannot practice justice in a system of white supremacy. It's impossible, because the system of white supremacy is designed to mistreat people. Mistreating people is not a just way to conduct the business of the planet. So you want a system of justice. So what would that look like? Well, to be specific, I made up a compensatory definition because I couldn't get much sense out of the broad definitions that I was looking at in most dictionaries. If you look in the dictionary and look for the word justice, the definitions are kind of broad. So I came up with what I call a compensatory definition that I think will hold up better until someone makes a suggestion about one that I think would be better, and I'll adopt that one myself. But right now, I have the one that I say consists of two parts in the definition of the word justice. Number one, part one, justice means, number one, to guarantee that no person is mistreated. And number two, to guarantee that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Underline the word constructive. And so that would apply in all areas of activity, including the one we're talking about right now, labor, the fourth area of activity in alphabetical order. And if you're on a job, you do what? You try to guarantee in every move that you make and everything that you say, right when you arrive in the morning on the job, you say that I'm going to try to guarantee all day long that anybody who's working around me or working with me and I'm working with or whatnot, I'm going to try to guarantee that nobody's mistreated. I'm not going to mistreat anybody. I'm not going to say anything that mistreat anybody. Even if people are saying things to mistreat me, which on a lot of jobs in the system of racism, oh, sure, you're going to get plenty of that. But you say, I'm not going to mistreat anybody, you know. And then number two, I'm going to try to give everybody here, white or non-white, all the constructive help, underline constructive, all the constructive help that I can give, because that's what I'm signing on for coming on this job. I'm not going to mistreat anybody. And even when people try to mistreat me, and most likely they will, somebody will, for sure. I mean, because that's the way everything is geared up. But you look for that and you expect that. But I'm not going to mistreat anybody. And I'm going to try to be as constructively helpful as I possibly can. Now, why is this? Because you're thinking about the world of the future, and you should be preparing yourself for it. The kind of world you want the world to be. The kind of world that you want when your voice is heard, and that people are looking to you for answers to questions and whatnot. How do you conduct yourself in the world of the future? Because the future is now, really. I mean, you start making it now, and you start getting in that practice.
Okay. All righty. Line number one. Okay, line number one. You are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question?
Good morning. I have a question, and I have just a brief comment. First off, I want to get Fuller's take. These are two concepts, words or phrases that have become quite popular, I would say largely in the aftermath of this most recent presidential election. And I've even noticed they've become even somewhat common even among black people as far as talking points. They are a seat at the table and the smooth transition of power. Now, let me give an example of what I'm talking about here quickly. Seat at the table as in we as black people need to have a seat at the table so our voices can be heard in terms of meeting with the president, et cetera, et cetera. And the other one, the smooth transition of power as in I went to the inauguration regardless of how I felt so that I could witness the peaceful transfer of power. So, and now let me say this. I have not interacted with anyone directly who has used these phrases, so I have not gotten the opportunity to ask them what do they mean when they use these terms. But just to you directly, what are your immediate thoughts when you hear these phrases or terms, and do you think that they're appropriate terms to use in describing our situation in reference to white supremacists or the warden, or however you want to describe it? That's the first part, and I'll just let you answer, and I'll quickly make my next point.
Mr. Fuller?
Well, for one thing, if I'm sitting at a table and someone is talking about transfer of power, first thing I think about is I'm not included in that. Because, first of all, I don't have any power that I can transfer to anybody. I mean, I'm a victim of white supremacy. I'm a prisoner of war. So I start with that. I don't have any power. So I'm talking, if I'm talking about power, I'm talking about somebody else who's at that table or who may not even be at that table. If I'm looking around and I see all non-white faces, I know there's no power there. I know that right off the bat. I mean, the power doesn't start until some white person comes and sits at the table. That's where your power is in the system of white supremacy, unless I have been misinformed.
Okay. What's your second question, sir?
All right. The last part here is last week, I called a bit of the show last week, and one of the things that struck me, I think it was one of the most profound things you stated, which we basically, in essence, talking about the malleability of the white supremacists and how they can be all things at once. How at one point of the day they can be this religion, later part of the day they can become the complete opposite, same politically and same in all other facets of life. And I think the confusion for most callers and most people who are regular listeners and some newer ones is they can't. I hope you can reiterate that and discuss that again at some point. I don't know if today is the day since you have a theme, but I hope you can, because I think that will help people in better understanding. And I think if people can ponder upon that they can be all things to all people whenever necessary, because they're not stuck as we oftentimes are, politically, religion, and otherwise. We're stuck typically. They're not. I think that's the key point made last week, and I think people need to study and take heed to that, because they will help in being unconfused about what this system is all about and how it operates and works. So I just want to throw that in also.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Fuller, you want to respond to that?
The white supremacists, that's what white supremacy means. It means total power. That's what that word supreme means. Total power, all right, in interactions between people. Now, on some other planet, that might not be true, but it's true on this planet in all 9 areas of activity. So it doesn't make any difference how they say it. See, but a white supremacist, you might say, sitting at the table, that's what that means. That's a supreme person. Meaning what? Supreme how? Supreme over whom? Supreme over the non-white people of this entire planet in all 9 areas of activity 24/7. Now, they will sit there and talk, and they will have talking points about this and talking points about that, but at the beginning of the meeting and at the end, at the beginning of each day and at the end of each day, the main thing that the white supremacist is making clear, directly and indirectly, him or her, is that I am in charge of all of you non-white people in all areas of activity 24/7, and it isn't a minute when I am not. And you will do what I say do, or else you will feel pain from me, because this is what I do. This is my specialty. This is my reason for being. And regardless of what I say and the promises that I make, I mean, I can break them anytime I want to and explain why I broke them, or not explain why I broke them. But also a characteristic of the white supremacists, they are masters of deceit. That's one of their main characteristics. So they know how to use words in such a way that they can explain everything in such a way that it seems to make sense. Because they know how to invent words. They'll make up words, brand new words, alt-right, and all like that, out of nowhere. And you'll ask, well, what does that mean? Well, it means whatever I say it means at the moment. You know, I'm the one that made it up. And so if I say it means this for this minute, and then as the meeting goes on and whatnot, I might say it means something else. And you say, well, that's not what you said a few minutes ago, sir. You seem to have said something that's different from what you're saying now. And then they will say, yes, I'm saying something that's what's different from what I said earlier this morning, you know. And you say, well, why are you doing this? Because I can.
Just
that's
like
all
that,
they have to do. See,
yes,
they don't have to answer to anybody. They don't have to make sense to anybody but themselves. And so you can expect that as long as the system of racism exists.
Okay.
So don't be confused by that, because the system of racism is designed to do what? Confuse their victims.
Right. Okay, TalkTainMenRadio.com is a 24/7, no-charge, worldwide broadcasting facility that have hosts delivering on various topics such as news, lifestyle, sports, health, wellness, religion, and politics. Now, here are three that I will share with you. One is entitled, What Does the Lord Say? Number 2, At the Table with Al Warner. And number 3, The John Coates Show. Now, to get the information on these shows, you have to go to TalkTainMenRadio.com homepage. And under the title of the show, there is a brief description of what these shows are all about and other shows that you may want to. And also, there's that donate button that we need for the second hour of the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., which we want you to hit. And thank you for those that have already hit it. In fact, while you're on the air right now, hit that button, that donate button, would you please? Anyway, these programs are all exclusive to TalkTainMenRadio.com, which is radio the way it should be heard. The call-in line is now open, 1-877-932-9766. Let me say that slowly, 1-877-932-9766. Or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. We are the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I'm the co-host, Mr. Bobby, and our own our own topic today, subject will be labor, and that's going to start on page 131, and I'm going to read a little bit, and then I'm going to have Mr. Fuller explain that. Speaking of labor, Mr. Fuller, you wrote, each person should choose to speak and or act according to one or more of the suggestions presented, but only if he or she decides to do so. No person should speak and or act according in any suggestion presented herein unless he or she has judged that the suggestion chosen is one of current and correct value in helping to eliminate racism, white supremacy, and or in helping to better produce justice. It is important to know and understand that one or more suggestions selected from one major area of people activity should be used in constructive combination with one or more suggestions selected from other major areas of people activity. Mr. Fuller, we're going into labor, the fourth area of people activity. What, as you open up this book or on this topic, labor, what do you mean by those statements as we go through this book, particularly for those who don't have the book? What are you talking about when you say labor?
Well, labor is just work, any kind of work, wherever you happen to be. Whether you're working for yourself or whatnot, or working with someone, you're always working with someone, because in order to get anything done, you have to make connections with people, and you're laboring, in preparation for connections with other people or getting things done. That's all it is. That's all labor is, just getting things done. You're laboring regardless of what you're doing. If you're just trying to catch the bus, I mean, that's labor. That can be called that because it's something that you're trying to do, to accomplish something. Labor just means trying to accomplish something. So most of us labor thinking in terms of getting paid for our labor because we're doing what somebody else wants done in order to get some money so that we can use that money to get some of the things done that we want done.
Okay.
So that's all it really is.
Okay.
So if you're interacting with other people, you want to do it in such a way that always has a constructive result.
Okay.
All right. But keep in mind, you are laboring if you're a person classified as non-white.
Okay.
You are laboring inside of a prison.
Laboring inside of a prison. Okay. Now, with that being said, could you pick it up on page 131 where it says, in a social material system dominated by the races? Could you read those paragraphs there that you've written?
Yes. In a social material system dominated by white supremacists, all jobs that are established and are maintained by white people are dominated either directly or indirectly by those white people who practice white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's any job that you own anywhere in the planet. I don't care where. If you're a non-white person and you say you have a job, you are working on a job that is dominated by white supremacists.
Okay.
Why? Because the entire planet is dominated by people who practice white supremacy. Okay. As related to whom? As related to anyone who has color in his or her skin. So you're always on a job that is dominated by white supremacy.
Even if you own your own business?
You're on the planet.
Even if you own your own business?
You don't own an own business.
You don't?
Think that you do.
Oh, okay.
If you own this planet and you have a so-called business, that business has to be permitted either directly or indirectly
I see what you're saying.
by someone who believes in and who practices white supremacy. That's what supreme means.
Okay.
Supreme all the time, everywhere. Never a moment when it's not. We have to understand that. Otherwise, we will lose the whole picture.
Okay, so someone let you be the owner of what you say is your business.
Any black person who says, oh, nobody tells me what to do, I run my business. Well, if you own this planet, who runs the planet? All right? And what kind of business are you in, sir? Well, I'm in the carpentry business. Well, where does lumber come from? Well, it comes out of the ground. I mean, it comes from trees and whatnot. Well, who controls the trees, that sees to it that you can get some lumber, from those trees that go into your lumber and carpentry business, sir? Who controls that? Do you? Do you control the source of it and all like that? Because if you don't have a source, you ain't going to have a business.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So, and on and on and on. Look at the big picture. Keep the big picture in mind, because the big picture is the only picture that really counts.
Okay, go ahead. Continue with that paragraph there.
Okay. And it says, in addition, there's no such thing as a non-white person being a supervisor on a job in any social material system that is dominated by white supremacy. Supervisor means superior advisor. No non-white person, no person who has color in his or her skin is a superior advisor. Only the white supremacists are superior advisors to non-white people in all areas of activity. That's why they are supreme. They're the people who will make the final decision. You can make all kinds of suggestions about what you're going to do or what you want to do or where you want to go or how you want to go about doing it on a job or off the job or anywhere in the system of white supremacy. But the white supremacists are always the superior advisors. They give superior advice.
Okay. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go. Check us out on 94.1 WGRN. Podcasts are available. Download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's your radio the way it should be heard. Stay right there. We're going to get into your Gmails, have Mr. Fuller explain more on labor, and more of your phone calls. All that and more coming up next on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
TalkTainmentRadio.com is the premier internet radio platform offering 40-plus talk radio-style programs professionally produced, optimized for online distribution, featuring Columbus, Ohio on-air personalities. TalkTainmentRadio.com offers listeners diverse programming options covering topics such as arts and culture, love, life and relationships, technology, religion, paranormal activities, local and national politics, women's issues, alongside health and wellness. Listeners can access their favorite TalkTainmentRadio.com programs free of cost through the website. Download the TTR app to your cell phone and you can take us wherever you go. We have programs on demand to fit your schedule through our podcast. The address is TalkTainmentRadio.com.
Every year, June marks the beginning of two busy seasons, summer and wedding season. If you are legally changing your name, you need to apply for a replacement Social Security card reflecting your new name. This is easier to fix now when you first change your name than years from now when you retire. So go to our website at www.socialsecurity.gov/SS number or call us at 1-800-772-1213, TTY 1-800-325-0778 to find out what specific documents you need to change your name and apply for a replacement card.
I've got the water, energy bars, and camera. I think we're set for the hike.
Almost. We need to protect our skin. Don't forget your wide-brimmed hat and sunscreen.
All right. I've got the hat. I've got SPF 30. Will that work?
Yeah, anything 15 or higher is good. Just make sure it says broad spectrum.
Great. Got it. I am not getting burned again. Let's go.
Learn more at cdc.gov/cancer.
Think fast. In less than 30 seconds, a small flame can become a big fire. Don't let your world go up in smoke. Have working smoke alarms and keep heaters 3 feet away from anything that can burn. Learn more at usfa.fema.gov because fire is everyone's fight.
Families affected by disasters urgently need support. Help the American Red Cross provide meals and shelter to those affected by disasters, big and small. Donate to Red Cross Disaster Relief. Go to redcross.org or call 1-800-RED-CROSS.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. I think I'm entitled. You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
You got the power.
TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go, and download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. The call-in line is now open, 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com, and I will try to get to your Gmails. The main focus will be to have Mr. Fuller answer your questions, so the calls come first and then the Gmails come next if we have time. That's why they are backed up. This is Mr. Bobby and the co-host on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, and our on-air topic today is the fourth area of people activity, speaking of labor. And Mr. Fuller, you left off by saying that speaking about supervisors and so forth. Could you continue, please?
Well, there's no such thing, say, for example, as a black supervisor. Nowhere on the planet.
There isn't.
Anything that matters.
Uh-huh.
I mean, and even things that don't matter. We're all in prison. When I say we, I mean people of color. A world prison. The entire planet is a prison. If you have color in your skin. Just get that focus. And the master of that prison, the prison master, is racist man and racist woman collectively.
Yes.
That's the white supremacists. So therefore, anywhere you go, any you are in prison. You have to get their permission to go from cell to cell, or to go to the recreation yard, so to speak, or to go here, go there. I mean, and go and work in the carpenter shop. I mean, the prison is, to make a movie comparison, is just a big Shawshank prison, or like the movie, for a non-white person. So, you have supervisors in a prison. But the supervisors, the ultimate supervisors in a prison, are the people who are the prison masters. Now, you might have people who are going around, telling other people what to do. I mean, like in the movie Shawshank Redemption, you might have a person who has a little position, say like the character that they had in there named Brooks. And Brooks had the position of doing what? He worked in the library. So he went around, up and down, and handed through the bars books to other prisoners. And that's the position that, say, somebody like Buller has. Right now, I can hand out books through the bars, you might say, and which is what I do, to non-white people, and they read them and whatnot, but they got to remember they are in a prison.
Okay.
I'm in a prison.
Okay.
But the prison masters allow me to make available some books about even our circumstances. They don't care. As long as nothing happens, they don't care. Now, if something starts happening, then like Brooks, they might chastise me or anybody else who is breaking, you might say, the prison rules.
Okay. Now, since you mentioned that, you mentioned also about racist man and racist woman. So there are people that are going to say, Mr. Fuller, I'm a supervisor and I'm a manager. I'm responsible for such and such people. And so you are saying to that, what say you to that?
Say that again now?
There are some people who are supervisors or managers of people with that title. Maybe they've earned it or whatever, appointed, I don't know how, but they manage people. Maybe they're going to dispute what you have to say because they are in charge of this group or this section. What say you to that?
I put it in the form of a question because I say all clarity comes from questions and answers.
Okay.
So that's a question being directed to me. What I say to that is another question. Who is in charge of the non-white people of this planet? Are they the white supremacists? Now, there are a lot of black people who say, nobody's in charge of me.
Right.
I do what I want to do.
Yes.
I go where I want to go. Nobody stops me from doing anything. Where you get all of this? Where are you spreading this nonsense, Neely Fuller? Who are you? Nobody's never told me what to do. All right, I don't dispute that. But I say put it to a test. Put it to an ultimate test. There's nothing like putting things to a test yourself. And ask yourself, does anybody ever tell you what you better not do? And what does that person look like? That's two questions.
All right, two questions. All right, let's go to the Gmails. Let's see. Okay, this comes from Chris. He says this, Dr. Chris says this, Mr. Fuller, are black people's mentality and or thinking is socially engineered by the miseducation and confusion?
Here again, sometimes I don't get the question the first time around.
Okay, I'll read it again. It says, are black people's mentalities and or thinking is socially engineered by the miseducation and confusion? That's just the way he wrote it.
Oh, sure. See, yes, miseducation, if you want to use that term, Carter G. Woodson did in The Miseducation of the Negro. That's the title of his book. Mm-hmm. He was a professor at one time who wrote a book called The Miseducation of the Negro. And sure, what do you mean by miseducation? It means you haven't been educated in the most constructive manner, meaning we have learned things, but has it produced anything from our learning that should be produced on a scale of problem solving? And it hasn't. So the white supremacists never want their slaves, like any prison master. You don't want your slave to ever be anything except an excellent model prisoner. So your so-called education would just make you a model prisoner. I mean, it won't have you be a person who is no longer in prison. See, so that's the whole idea behind that, because the white supremacists are dedicated. A slave master is dedicated to always having slaves. Otherwise, how is a slave master going to continue to be a slave master without slaves to be the master over? So anything that the slave master tells his or her slaves is to strengthen the system of slavery.
Okay. All righty. Let's move on here. Let's do another Gmail here. This, all right, here it is. It says, Mr. Fuller, my question to you is in regard to a potential 10th area of activity. I know there are 9, but tell me if you've ever considered psychology and medicine as areas of activity. Psychology is the means of controlling how people think, and medicine, the power over one's health, life, and death. Comes from Dr. J.
Oh, psychology is what now?
Wait a minute. Psychology is the means of controlling how people think, and medicine, the power over one's health, life, and death.
Oh, okay. Well, the psychology, basically, from what I'm hearing, if I got it correctly, is just the use of the mind. That's all it is. How do you use your mind? Everybody has a mind. So how do you use your mind? That's basic psychology. So you don't have to add that as, in words, I mean, as a area of activity, because if you're using your mind, you're using psychology. Everybody does that every minute of the day. I mean, including people in what you call mental institutions. They use what they have in order to interact with other people. Anytime you're interacting with people, for sure, you're talking and you're acting, you're interacting. So that's psychology of some type or another. I would say in the purest form of using the word, I mean, you're talking to someone. You are using your words and your actions to influence what someone else is doing in their interactions with you. You're in a restaurant. You say, could you bring me some more water, please? I don't have a fork or a knife. I mean, you forgot to bring the forks and knives. I mean, could you bring me a fork? Could you bring me a knife? That's basic psychology. That's basic interaction. That's all it is. Anytime you're interacting with anybody and using your influence of words to do so, I mean, and your words are coming from the things that you're thinking, and your thinking is telling you that you want something or you don't want something. That's all psychology is. It's basic psychology. And so some people might say, well, advanced psychology, is a little different, and they're correct. Well, what is advanced psychology? It's just using your words and your interactions and whatnot, I mean, to advance over something that you were doing before.
Okay.
And that's all advanced psychology is.
Okay. All right. Topic today is the 4th area of people activity, labor. You have any questions on that? You can call at 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go, and you can download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app or your cell and to your tablet. The call-in line is now open, 1-877-932-9766. And all this is sponsored by Talktainment Radio. That's radio the way it should be heard. Neely Fuller is our usual guest today. Again, topic is labor. But here's a question from one of our Gmailers, no name. Mr. Fuller, Donald Trump, when asked about Putin being a killer, said that the U.S. has killed people also, but offered no proof to that statement. What is the counter-racist codified response to that statement?
To the statement
that he said that Americans, he was asked by Bill O'Reilly that Putin is a killer, and President Donald Trump's response, said that, Americans kill people too, but didn't offer any proof to that statement, just said, Americans kill people too. What the question was, what is the counter-racist codified response to that statement?
Take him at his word. And if you have anything to say at all, just ask further questions. Here again, all clarity comes from questions and answers. All problems are solved through the process of what? Questions and answers. No exceptions to that rule. So if I had anything else to say, if I was sitting at the table and Mr. Trump said that, and he allowed me to ask a question, that's the first thing that you do.
Okay.
Is get permission to ask a question from the person who you want to answer the question. And say, can I ask you a question, sir? And, and the question would be, can you elaborate?
Yes.
On what you mean?
Yes.
When you say that. And could you give some examples? You might have 2 or 3 dozen questions.
Yes.
You might get permission to say, can I ask you about a dozen questions, sir, on what you just said? Can I ask you for 6 questions or 7 questions, and then get my questions orchestrated?
Yes.
So that we both be on the same page. If you're asking somebody to do something, you should be courteous and whatnot and get permission to do whatever it is that you're trying to do.
Yes, sir. When I did see that interview, and I asked myself that, since he said that, because he couldn't hear me, I wanted to know, if this is true, what proof do you have of that? Or where can I obtain this, since you said that Americans kill people also? But the host of that question
my response is, first of all, what is an American? What Americans are you talking about? Which ones? When? Where? See, you want a lot of details. See, in clarification, you have to have what? Like in court. And I always say that the whole world is a court, and everybody's on trial. So you go through courtroom procedures.
Okay.
When people are making important statements, and you ask dozens of questions, because that's what happens in court. I have been in courtrooms and whatnot, and that's one of the first things I observe, is everything is questions and answers. Endless questions and answers. And sometimes they say, court is going to adjourn today, and we'll all be back here tomorrow, whether anybody likes it or not, because we're going to continue these questions and answers, because we didn't get enough answers to the questions today. And people grumble and whatnot. They file out and whatnot, but they're right back there the next day, half asleep and whatnot, me among them, because why? The judge said, we got some more questions. And we want answers to those questions. Nobody's going nowhere until we get them.
Okay.
Period.
All righty. Speaking of labor in the fourth area, on page 132, I'm going to read the part that is blacked, and then, Mr. Fuller, I want you to respond to that. You wrote, as long as the system of white supremacy, racism, exists, do not expect any job situation to be as it should be conducted with justice and correction. Explain that, please, to our listeners.
Yes, we're in a system of white supremacy, so you can always expect to be mistreated. That's just putting it simply. You go on a job, and a lot of people say, well, I'm not going to put up with this. But you got to remember, you're in a prison. Okay? So you're going to move to another part of the prison, and you can do that because, some mistreatment is less than others. You have to make that judgment yourself. But most likely you're going to be mistreated anywhere you go. You're not going to find that paradise. It doesn't exist, that ideal situation. But some situations are less harsh than others. Like I use the Shawshank Redemption movie again. I mean, Red, the black fella in the prison, every now and then he could wrangle a few things. He'd say, well, hey, we can get some outside work. All right? We can, in May, it's a good time to be outside rather than all cooped up in the cell. So we can get some outside work because they're going to do some roofing jobs here at the prison. Going to put a new roof on. And we can be a part of that roofing crew. All right? And Andy there, I mean, this fellow who's always able to, do a lot of thinking and think ahead and all like that. I mean, he even got us a few beers. So, hey, beer in prison? I mean, we never got that before.
Mm-hmm.
But see, in other words, you got a little better position. But basically, you're still what? In prison. You don't forget that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You don't forget that. Okay, on page 133, you mentioned this, let's see, 1, 2, 3, about 9 dots down. You said, do not talk about sex, sexual intercourse, sexual play, and or homosex or lesbian sex, and then you parenthesize anti-sex, in any manner that is non-constructive or unnecessary. When others do so, listen and say in a soft and courteous manner, that's interesting, and say nothing else. Why do you say that, Mr. Fuller?
Because sometimes sexual talk can get you into a sexual situation that becomes explosive on the job. By being explosive, I mean you can lose your job. All right? So, you be real careful about talking anything that's sexual and whatnot. You might insult somebody and not know that you're doing so. You're trying to be, what you might call casual or friendly or something like that. And depending on the situation, and you'll know what the situation is when you start getting repercussions. When someone objects to something that someone says that has sexual connotations. Sometimes it's just what you might call a non-offending remark, and someone will take it as an offense. So you have to be careful about that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can do it if the person that you agree to talk with, agrees that this is the way we're going to talk. But you try to minimize that as much as you possibly can. Because one thing, it leads to sometimes an ugly situation. Job, people will say that that's not job-related, it doesn't help to do the job and all like that. And it might make someone be uncomfortable, particularly if you have a situation of males and females. Certain remarks are made. Have to be careful. You have to be careful. Depends on the circumstances. Some circumstances are more, you might call, laid back than others. And in other circumstances, you might offend someone based on religion or custom or whatever.
Okay. You also said at the bottom of the page of 133, you said, could you read that, the very last little paragraph there, starting with always.
On page 131?
No, 133.
133.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, always make sure that whatever you do is something that you were told to do by someone who was assigned to do the telling.
Mm-hmm.
Ask all of the questions that are necessary to do what you were told, and do all that you can to be sure that whatever you do produces a result that is always correct and constructive. Now, if you're in a situation where it looks like you're going to do something that's not constructive, now you do what? You don't get belligerent or anything like that. You don't start an argument, but you just simply ask more questions. See, here again, I'm going to say it again because I say this all the time. All problems must be solved, or can be solved, or will be solved through the process of questions and answers. So you first of all get permission to ask a question, and then you ask your questions. Sir, ma'am, this thing that we're fixing to do, is this going to produce a constructive result? And if so, how?
You ask that to yourself or to them?
You can ask anybody that.
Okay.
Yes, you can always ask a question once you get permission to ask the question. See, very few people will take offense to you asking a question. Some people will. They'll just say, well, look, I don't like the kind of questions you ask.
You're right.
All right. Then you can ask them another question. What type of questions do you want me to ask, sir? See? Stay in the question lane. If you stay in that question lane, and I tell people this all the time, I try to do it myself because I know that's the way to go.
Yes, sir.
The question lane is the best lane to be in. Stay away from making flat statements or any kind of statements if you can. Try to turn your statement into a question, particularly on a job.
Why?
All the time.
Why?
Speak in terms of questions.
Why?
Because people usually do not take offense to a question as much as they will take offense to a statement.
Okay.
Rather than say, for example, this is not the correct way to go about doing it, and that's what you're telling somebody that. Now, that's a statement. Now, people might take offense to that, all right? Even if you're being polite, you'll say, well, look, ma'am, this is not the correct way of going about doing this. Now, that lady may take offense to that statement. But if you say this, let's look at it this way. Ma'am, do you think this is the correct way to go about doing this? And if so, why? See?
Yes,
that's
sir.
a question. So the person is not likely to get offended by that. The person might, but the person can always answer. This gives them an opening. The person might even ask you a question in a hostile manner by you asking that question. Say, are you questioning what I'm doing? And you say, no, I'm just asking, about, since we're all working together here, is this the best way to go about doing it? Well, sure, it's the best way to go about doing it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have said so. And then you say, well, thank you. Nothing else you could say other than that. See what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have given you the answer. So you don't bother with the answer that you got, except if you have another question.
Wow. That could be...
Questions and answers. Stay in the question lane on a job or anywhere else, really, as much as you possibly can when you interact with people.
When you
it's
interact
the best way.
Mm-hmm. And when you interact with people.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Wow. Stay in the question lane. Well, what if they tell you they don't want to answer no more questions?
That's okay. That's the answer.
That's the answer?
And you can remind them of that. I mean, later on, particularly on a job, that's like a gold mine.
Why do you say that?
Because when you're doing something and the person says, look, if you didn't know what you were doing, why didn't you ask somebody? You say, well, Miss Green, if you remember, you told me last month, don't ask any more questions. Or is that what you told me? Put that in the form of a question. Did you tell me last month not to ask any more questions? Or that I asked too many questions? And how many questions are too many?
Ooh, wow. How many questions are too many questions?
Yeah. And have them give you a fixed number. Only 5 questions a month, folks.
Wow.
Right, in this factory.
Okay.
We don't like this idea of some of you people going around here asking questions. I mean, questions are verboten. Questions are off limits.
Okay.
Don't ask no questions. Let's go about doing whatever you're going to do. Don't ask nobody nothing.
Okay. TalkTameAtRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. That's radio the way it should be heard. Stay tuned for the second hour of the compensatory concept with Neely Fuller. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.
The most important question in all racial matters is why. One should always ask it.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You've got the power. The world's greatest radio. TalkTainmentRadio.com. Talktainment Radio, worldwide sound. Talktainmentradio.com. Give reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
All right. Good morning and welcome to TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go on the world's greatest radio. You are in touch with The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is radio the way it should be heard. This is also the second hour, the donated hour. And while you are listening, do us a favor. Since we have entered 2017, the new year, we want to continue to bring this second hour of The Compensatory Concept, but we need your help. All you have to do is go to the TalkTainmentRadio.com homepage and hit that donate button. Hit it often, too, by the way, and make your donation of any amount that you want to. Some donations have come in, but we still need you to do your due diligence, especially since you ask for the second hour, and Mr. Fuller and myself do not mind in doing it, but we do need your help to be able to do that. So go to the TalkTainmentRadio.com homepage, hit the donate button, and any amount that you want to hit. It is a tax-deductible donation, and that money will go to the production of The Compensatory Concept with Neely Fuller Jr. The phone lines are now open. You can call at 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. Our on-radio subject this morning is the fourth area of people activity, entitled labor. In the first hour, Mr. Fuller explained that he will do so again in this hour. But before he does that, Mr. Fuller, you need to speak about your book and where we can get it, and if there's any other materials that we need to get this book.
Just go to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is a brief description of the basic revised expanded edition of the Counter-Racist Code, and that's a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of white supremacy. If you don't consider yourself a victim of white supremacy, either directly or indirectly, then the book is not for you. Mm-hmm. And that would be, of course, a person who is classified as non-white. And you go to producejustice.com, and the method for ordering the book will come up. And there's also an additional volume there. Some people get both books, but the basic book is the one that most people get. But the second book is an addition to the first book in the form of a word guide, how to use words, how not to use words, what questions to ask when other people use words. I mean, because in the system of white supremacy, words are very important. Books are made up of words. Books transfer words in the form of ideas and suggestions for people to act or interact on. I mean, and about what's in the book.
All right. Again, phone lines are now open, 1-877-932-9766, or Gmail me at 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. Let's go to the emails here. Gmails. Mr. Fuller, this comes from CJ. He says, Dr. CJ says, could you ask Mr. Fuller why he only refers to the concepts of America, Asia, and Africa, and does not refer to these concepts in reference to so-called Europe, Antarctica, and Australia? Thank you.
Oh, because there's no such thing. I looked in several books and down through the years, and what is called Europe is usually called the Euro-Asian continent, and to me it doesn't make sense, so I don't even address that.
Okay.
Euro-Asian? They say it's a continent. Euro-Asian continent. You can take a look yourself. And they say that, well, in one context, what is a continent and what makes a continent a continent? And so, to me, that area called Europe and Europeans, that's just a word that really doesn't apply to much of anything. It's just a location where there might be some people, and you can call it anything.
Okay.
So I more or less just kind of dismiss it as, what does that mean? What does it mean to be European? All right. I don't understand the concept at all. So it's not a major concept, European, or is it? And if it is, what makes it so distinctive as being a major concept? So I look at the terms American, which is very, very vague, and I look at the term African, which is vague, and it's vague also, and then Asian, but these terms are used, mostly, you hear the word America and American all the time, and it's one that I relate to, because that's what I've been told that I am, and all like that. But then, when I look at any of these words, Asian, African, and American, the definitions are vague.
Okay.
They are really vague. So I came up with compensatory definitions for at least 3 of them, and dismissed the European thing altogether.
All right.
And I say that I'll let somebody else explain what that means.
Okay.
And so I just left that alone. But Asian, African, American all mean the same thing. It means what? You're talking about people. What kind of people? People who practice justice. And none of these people exist. There's no such thing as an American. There's no such thing as an African. And there's no such thing as an Asia in the form of people on this planet in 2017, according to what? According to logic. Okay. Because in order to qualify to be any one of those 3 people, Asian, African, American, you have to practice justice. And it's impossible to practice justice on a planet that's dominated by white supremacists. That's the equation. That's the logic.
That's the logic. Okay, let's go to the phone lines. Line number 1, you are on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Good morning, Mr. Fuller. Good morning. Good morning, Barbara. How you guys
Good morning.
Dr. Fuller. All right. Dr. Fuller, you always said that that if the white supremacists find you that you were what word I'm looking for? What I'm looking for? That you're effective, and I think they do find you effective more than you think. I think you give yourself credit more than you think, and that because I think there's either a glitch in the system, or which I don't think it's that, but I think that somebody is deliberately wiping out your lectures, going right back out there, and I try to go back and try to listen, so sometimes I don't catch it in the morning, and when I go back, it's completely wiped out. So I think somebody's deliberately wiping out a lot of your lectures that you put on the internet, and I just want you to get note of that.
Okay.
So, and I tried going back to look at some myself, and they're out.
Okay. Mr. Fuller, you want to respond to that, people messing with your work?
I've heard all kinds of things that are going on, and I expect, sabotage. I always.
That's the word. That's what I'm looking for.
I have a duty to always suspect that.
Yes, sir.
Anything that will impede people interacting with each other in a way that they are trying to replace the system of racism with justice, I think it will be interfered with. Now, I don't know, I'm not familiar with all the different electronic ways of going about doing things.
What I'm saying is that a lot of your stuff that you put on YouTube, and I go back to try to catch it because I don't catch the podcast, sometimes I miss the podcast, and it's completely wiped out. If you can please check that and fix that. There's a lot of lectures that I missed that I really want to catch up on, and I can't.
Okay.
Well, a lot of things I'm not connected with, too. I'm connected with talktainmentradio.com. Now, that can be amplified all over the place. But there are people who, some of them have correct intentions, I guess, who put things up, and then for some reason it's taken down. And then it's come to my attention there are a lot of people who have ill intent.
Yes.
And I'm quite sure the white supremacists, if they're not doing it themselves, they're having some non-white people do some things that amount to subversive activity.
You're making a break toward the fence, Dr. Fuller, and they're trying to stop you.
Yeah, so you can expect this type of thing. But you can go to talktainmentradio.com, and hopefully the electronics there will allow you to get a straight dose of whatever it is that I'm trying to put out here, and hopefully it is of constructive value.
Okay. Thank you. Sir. Thank you for your call, caller. Okay. In other words, Mr. Fuller, as of right now, as we speak on this day, you do not have a YouTube channel. Is that correct?
I don't have anything. I go directly to talktainmentradio.com, and every now and then I'm a guest on things like AM, FM, regular radio, Straight Talk being one of them with Kahari and Aharo. Every now and then I'm a guest there. Also some other radio stations like Carl Nelson on WOL.
In D.C.
1450 FM.
Mm-hmm.
These are AM, FM stations, but only periodically, not on regular. TalkTainmentRadio.com is what I do regularly. Now, if you hear me on some other venues and whatnot, I have no direct connection with that.
Right. That's why sometimes I say that we are the official site for Mr. Neely Fuller Jr.'s The Compensatory Concept. It is, as it is unrehearsed, and it is alive. Mr. Fuller and I do not come together or huddle before the show and say we're going to go this way, that way. It is uncut. It is live, just the way it is. But as Mr. Fuller stated, that we have heard and I have seen and also heard of the work being distributed on other social media outlets, and some of the work is distorted or some parts cut out so that it appears that Mr. Fuller sanctioned that. But Mr. Fuller, as you just heard him say, does not have anything to do with that. He's exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, and that's important. Now, they might even, whoever they are, might even cut that part out. But anyway, that's who we do. Let's do this right now. TalkTainmentRadio.com is a 24/7, no-charge, worldwide broadcasting facility that have hosts delivering on various topics such as news and lifestyle, sports, health, wellness, religion, and, of course, politics. Now, here's a couple that I'd like to share with you. One is called This is Libby. Very good show. Senior Agenda, and it's your time to travel. Now, I'm not going to go into a description of those shows. However, you can go to the TalkTainmentRadio.com homepage, and you can find out all about the Senior Agenda, This is Libby, and it's your time to travel. And not only that, but other shows that are exclusive to TalkTainmentRadio.com, the radio the way it should be heard. The dates and the times that the shows come on, in a little description of what they are about. And while you're there, while you are there, hit that donate button too, because The second hour of the compensatory concept is fully funded by your donations. So while you're there looking at all that information, hit that donate button. That's right. Don't care how much it is, just hit it so that we can continue on the second hour, or with the second hour of the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. That's exclusive to Talktainment Radio, radio the way it should be heard. The call-in line is now open. Again, you may call at 1-877-932-9766. Or you can Gmail me at 7, the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby at BOBBY@gmail.com. This is the compensatory concept. Neely Fuller is our guest as usual, even though it is his show, but it's still, he's our guest. And we invite you to call. Our on-air topic is the fourth area of people activity today, and it will be for the next four more weeks, which is labor. So if you have any questions about labor, you may call in or Gmail me, and I will try to read them. Going to labor, Mr. Fuller, before we go over to page 135, let's start in 134. You said near the bottom of the page, there are 7 things you said try to get this done by. First of all, you said avoid talking directly about race or racism and or sex unless others mention such matters directly to you. Choose to focus on talking about the production of justice as the reason for anything and everything that you say or do. Use courtesy in reminding everyone that, to the best of your knowledge and understanding, every person in the known universe has the duty of doing this, or doing his or her best to speak and act to produce justice. Then there are 7 things that you mentioned. Could you mention them near the bottom of page 134 of the Revised Expanded Edition?
The bottom of page 134?
Yeah, it says concentrate. You said try to get these things done by.
Oh, concentrating on what you know best. All right. That's number 1.
Yes.
And then choosing a situation that needs improvement. These are things you do on the job.
Yes.
Concentrate on what you know best. All right, that's to start with. You always have to start somewhere, so you concentrate on whatever you already know. And then you choose a situation that needs improvement. Now, these are things that you can do to help yourself and or others on a job in the most constructive manner. And number 3, getting all the facts. Before you do anything, ask those questions. Get the facts about what it is you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it, and what is expected of you, so that somebody doesn't criticize you and whatnot and you get in trouble somewhere down the line. And then you interpret the facts that you get and make sure that you get those correctly. Then you think of possible improvements. That's the next thing you do on whatever the facts that you have been given about whatever it is you're going to be working on, a project or something like that. Then you choose the better way of making that improvement. It might be 4 or 5 ways. And so you try to, out of the 4 or 5 that you have given, you try to, coordinate with someone or with yourself to do it in the best possible manner. Try to think of ways. And convincing others, that's the last one, that it is an improvement. In other words, if you say that something is going to be an improvement, that if you move this over here, you move that over there, it will be an improvement, make things easier and more efficient in getting whatever it is you're trying to get done, getting it done.
Okay. Now, underneath that, you had something, advice for the males. I didn't see any advice for the females, but could you explain that on the males?
Yes, for sure. Well, when in situations on the job where you often interact with a female, inform her of the following. If at any time I say anything to you do anything in your presence or say anything about you that you find offensive or unpleasant, please tell me. Now, I address that mostly to males.
Mm-hmm.
It can be addressed to females.
Okay.
But I address that mostly to males because usually in many situations, males say a lot of things in an uncaring or unthinking manner, you might say, that are offensive to females, and the females don't say anything. So every male on a job situation should make it very clear to every female on a job situation. See, now, if I ever say anything or do anything that you find offending, because sometimes, fellows say things that are offending to females, and they are not aware that it is offensive. So you let them know in front that if you ever say anything or do anything, let me know. Let me know that I have said something offensive or said something that you objected to or conducted myself in such a way that you found inappropriate. Let me know this in front. Just let me know in front.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm asking you to let me know. So therefore, it won't be any conflict there. Just feel free to tell me. All right? And I'll see to it that I don't do that anymore if it's something that you find offensive or non-constructive. I'll listen to what you have to say. We'll discuss it and whatnot if it calls for a discussion. Or I might just look at it and say, well, hey, it's not going to cost me anything to change that. I didn't know it was being offended, so I just won't do it. Now, if it's going to interfere with something else and whatnot, then I have an explanation to the lady.
Okay.
And another thing, everyone is a lady to a male, according to the code. All females are ladies, even when they are, quote, unquote, acting unladylike. You always refer to them as ladies or lady.
Why?
Because it's the courteous thing to do. That's one of the 10 stops. Always try to be more courteous than anybody else. Just have that in your mind. I'm not going to let anybody be more courteous than me.
Okay.
Under all circumstances. When people are being a little bit discourteous, if it's 6 or 7 people involved, I'm going to be the most courteous person in the bunch. And just have this in your mind. We've discussed this before in the 10 stops. Be courteous. Be courteous at all times.
Always be courteous. ABC, always be courteous.
Right.
Okay, I got that. Okay. Let's see here. Let's go to the Gmails. This comes from Dr. Adams. He says, God bless you, Mr. Fuller. You are a true warrior. You explained the situation so clearly, but you must remember that lead has been put in the water in black communities. The food has been drugged. People are making money off of this foolish music, and people have been hypnotized by stupid television. The result is black people are so dumbed down and zombinized, most of them can't grasp what you are saying. This is supremely evident in these overrated and overpriced so-called institutions of higher education. The people coming out of these places are either stupid or pretending to be so as part of the deception. Could you comment on that, Mr. Fuller?
Well, to the extent that this is happening, according to the code, what you do is write and read counter-racist material in the situation that you're in. When you begin to perceive this, haul out the compensatory code counter-racist book and read it. That's what the book is for. It's to counter this type of activity, because we assume that we are in this prison called the system of white supremacy. That's a world prison if you are a person of color, and you are an inmate in that prison. So naturally, the water is poison, the food is poison, the information that you get is loaded with poison and whatnot, and you have to extract whatever truth you can get out of it from the falsehood. I mean, and you do this all the time because you are in prison, and also you're on a battlefield, which is the whole planet. If you're a person of color, you are on a battlefield. War is always being waged against you, either what you might call low or high key, or whichever way you want to put it. So everything that you do is supposed to be geared toward changing this situation from the situation as it is to the situation as it should be. And that's the only criteria for doing anything in any area of activity while you're in the prison. Yes. Everything should be gauged toward eliminating the situation as it is, all of the non-constructive elements, and making it into the most constructive element that you're allowed to make it in.
Okay.
And you do this minute by minute, each and every day, wherever you happen to be on the planet.
Okay, let's go to the phone lines. Line number 1, you're now on with Mr. Fuller.
Yes, peace, brother, and peace, Mr. Fuller. I have 2 questions. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I have 2 questions.
Number 1.
Okay, number 1 is, Mr. Fuller, do you know the chronological history of the so-called white man while he was living in the caves in the Caucasus Mountain, at war with his woman and others around him, and at the time coming out of the caves, being at war and taking all of the resources of people of color even up to the present time, 2017. So, whereas that now he's at war in the Middle East. And so are you aware of his history, that at no time have he been around with the human family that he has been able to live in peace? And number 2 is, are you aware that science tell us that the so-called white man is 90%, 96% human, and 4% Neanderthal man? And if that is true, some say it is his nature to be who he is. So my question, are you aware, those 2 questions, are you aware of those 2 things?
I have heard some version of everything that you just said. And being aware, I take that into account. But I also take into account that everyone has shown some signs of being poisonous. Now, where it all originated, meaning with the first people that appeared on the planet, the question is, did they have any poisonous features about them in any way? Were they perfect people? And even if they were perfect at one time, what happened? How did it happen? So I usually make the assumption that no people are the quality of people that people should be, for whatever reason they got to be that way. No people are the quality of people that they should be. And I make the assumption that perhaps no people have ever been, no people, white or non-white, the quality of people that people should be. But I take the position that people do have ideals, because the idea of justice is something that was produced or showed up for some reason in the minds of people. That, and justice being, because I say myself, I have it in my mind, so it came from somewhere. I didn't make up the word justice, but it came from somewhere, and different people got different ideas about it. But I came up with an idea. It means guaranteeing that no person is mistreated, and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help without fail. And this will apply to everybody everywhere on the planet. Now, everything starts with an idea. So I'm just saying, even hearing about different people's histories, which I always say history is always distorted anyway. One person reports on something that happened, and then another person reports on the same thing that happened, and there are some variations between the 2 reports. That has always been.
Oh.
So I always say that all of history is inaccurate.
Okay.
All right. So you do the best that you can now.
We'll get that on the other side of the break. TalkTameAtRadio.com. We go where you go, and check us out on 94.1 WG. TalkTameAtRadio.com. We go where you go. Download the TalkTameAtRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. The call-in line is now open at 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com, and I will try to get your Gmails on. Our topic today, and will be for the next few weeks, I think 5 total, will be the fourth area of people activity, which is labor. But of course, as you know, since the show is unscripted, if you will, Mr. Fuller and I do not rehearse the topics that we're going to discuss. It's simply and straight off the cuff. It is the way it is, which is the way that Mr. Fuller likes it, and quite frankly, it's the way I like it also, because you never know. It's good. Anyway, but you can call on that subject of labor or any other questions that you may have. Mr. Fuller will address those questions. The person that was on the line, I guess he hung up. He had a second question, which we normally don't allow, but we were going to allow that one to come in. But anyway, we will have to move on, and let's go to the Gmails. Mr. Fuller, this comes from Dr. D'Souza up in Canada, and she wanted to know if you could give her the etymology of the word smart, including verb and noun. And I didn't know what that meant, but it just means the study of the origin of words and the way in which their meanings have changed throughout the history. And she wanted to know if you knew anything about the origins of the word smart.
No, except I looked in a dictionary just once and came to the conclusion about how I would use it, and that in a compensatory way, because that's why I call the work that I've done, the book, the compensatory code, meaning compensatory meaning what? Making up for what's missing. And so I say that what's missing is clarity in communications, for one thing. So I'll just make up some definitions for words that already people use. That's the easiest route to go, rather than invent a whole another language. I'll just use the language that I've been given, which is the English language. That's the only one I'm really familiar with. And I will give definitions for certain words that work for the victims of racism. So I picked out the word smart, and the first people I applied that to as the smartest, to go into the plural or something, I said the smartest people on the planet are the white supremacists when it comes to non-white people. Now, what do I mean by that within that context? Because context is everything. I mean, they're able to do what they want to do, and nobody seems to figure out how to stop them from doing the things that shouldn't be done. Because the white supremacists do a lot of things, like practicing white supremacy, something that should not be done. I mean, people should not mistreat people on the basis of color. They do that, and they do that very well, and they're smart enough to do it. And people wring their hands. They have meetings about it. I'm on the radio right now talking about it in 2017, which I shouldn't be. This mess should have been over before it even got started. I mean, not to say anything about the longest-running political and religious system and the most powerful that the world has ever seen. And it's fraudulent, and it's designed to harm people. But the people who practice it are smart enough to do so, and all the other people who claim that they are smart are not smart enough to stop them. So that means that they are the smartest people. When you are smart enough to do something that shouldn't be done, and no one is smart enough to stop you, it means you are smarter than the people who are trying to stop you. That's the way I use it. I just use it in a strictly mechanical way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some people say, "Oh, well, but that smart doesn't mean that. Use smart another way." No. You can use it. If you use it another way, that still doesn't change the condition. And the fact is that anytime someone is mistreating you and you are not smart enough to stop them, it means that the person that's mistreating you is smarter than you when it comes to the mistreatment. And you are not smart enough to stop it. That's all that means, and you can't dress it up.
Okay.
Many people, I think, the motive is, and everybody has that tendency, I guess, it's a normal tendency, to try to feel good about their situation.
Okay. Smart being number one as a verb, to be a source of sharp, local, and usually superficial pain as a wound, or to be the cause of a sharp, stinging pain as an irritating application, blow, and etc. Then as a noun, perhaps a sharp local pain, usually superficial, as from a wound, blow, or sting, or even keen mental suffering, as from wounded feelings, affections, grievous loss. Origin, of a word changing. What we normally think smart is like a smart person, but I guess over the years maybe the word has changed. As the example that you just gave about what smart means. Anyway, I hope that makes some clarification for you, Dr. D'Souza. But that's how we roll here. So thank you, Mr. Fuller, for addressing that issue. I was a little apprehensive in asking you that, but you did.
No, all questions are valid.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go on to page 135 in the middle. I'm going to read this, and then I have Mr. Fuller comment on that. You say, this is speaking on labor now. You said, in job or employment situations, do your best to make use of the following general suggestions. Could you pick at least three of those out that you have, Mr. Fuller, written down here?
Well, the first one is avoid being late. Always be where you agreed to be at the exact time that you agreed to be there, or at a time that is constructively earlier than the time that you agreed to be there. And those are two that's one very important thing.
Yeah, say that again, please.
Avoid being late.
There you go.
Yes, avoid being late. Be where you say you're going to be, or earlier than you say, and try to plan out everything. Now, there are all kinds of things that happen, and you should take into account things that happen. You might be distant from your place of employment, and so you consider when you pick a place to reside as your place of residence, always think in terms of the what-ifs. What if traffic gets backed up on that main thoroughfare? There's always a semi-trailer or something, that turns over. Or there's an oil spill. Or that, for some reason or another, there's a work site going on. There's some construction going on in that particular place. And every now and then they have it sealed off and traffic is backed up. That's in the modern places. A lot of places are not modern, but in many places you have what you call a modern setting, and that means traffic congestion. So you take that into consideration. If you have a new place of employment, always consider, first of all, how distant is it from where you have your place of residence, and how easy is it to get from one place to another, your place of residence primarily, to your job site, because this is super important, because it's going to determine whether you're going to be employed. If you keep being late showing up at the job, you will probably lose the job.
Yes.
Many people have experienced that.
Yes.
You are in the place of residence that you want to be, but that place of residence might have to change it in order to be what? closer to your job so that you what? Will not be late.
Yes.
You don't want to keep being late.
Yes. I was speaking with a team member yesterday of my team, and it was mentioned that a certain person was terminated because this person couldn't get to the job on time.
Yes. I mean, with the best of intentions. And there are some jobs that are very crucial to your being there. And if you're not there, they definitely have to get someone else.
Yes.
Because they can't, they can't function until you show up. So you have to make sure that where you have to be is a place that you can get to.
Okay.
Before you even accept that job, you think about it now. I don't want to get on this job and be on it for 6 weeks and then lose it.
Yeah.
So therefore, I have to figure, how am I going to get to this place
Okay. And
from where I am at any given time when I'm supposed to be here?
Okay.
How am I going to go about doing that? And you might run 5, 6, 7 rehearsals under different conditions just to see. Hey, what if it snows? All right. Or they have mudslides here a lot.
Yes.
Down here on that section of highway or what. So you consider all of that. Do they seal it off every now and then? And that's on a crucial day when you're supposed to be at a meeting or something like that.
Yes, sir.
And there you are, and you got to get on your cell phone and say that, they're not going to open up for another 2 hours.
Okay. Let's see. Could you pick up on the 12th point on page 136, the last point, before we go into a little commercial here?
130.
Yeah, where it says
make
a written
on
record.
Page 136.
Yes, sir.
Make a written record of those things that you see or hear that may be of use to you in the future in solving problems and or in helping you to protect yourself or others from incorrect accusations. Study what those with the most power do or not do. Listen to what those with the most power say and not say. Choose those parts of what is expressed by talk, signs, pictures, incidents, and make written notes for use of those things that may be of future constructive value. In other words, when everything is kind of quiet on the job and all like that, pay attention to things. Pay attention to signs on the wall and pictures and make note of incidents.
Yes.
Just scratch down some notes because your memory doesn't serve you very well for most people.
Right.
So if you see something happening that seems like it's out of the ordinary and all like that, and no one is saying anything about it, just make a note to yourself. Have a little notebook.
I am glad you said that because could you continue right there where it says record?
Yes. Make a written record of those things that you see or hear that may be of use to you in the future in solving problems.
Right.
See, everything is about problem solving. And most likely you're going to run into a problem on your job that has to do with you having a job. All right?
Yes.
So even when things are nice and quiet and running smoothly, there'll be things going on sometimes that you may not notice, but you should take notice of.
Yes.
Because they may be significant later on.
Yes. At the end of that point, you wrote, this is what you wrote. You said, record the time, date, circumstances, correct quotes, and correct descriptions of things said and done and by whom. Avoid making statements, practice asking questions, many questions, instead of making any accusations. Ask for an investigation. Wow.
Yes, don't make accusations. Never accuse anybody of doing anything. Just ask somebody to investigate what's going on.
Right.
See what I mean? That's a question. Say, well, Mr. Graham, I have something to bring to your attention, and I would like for you to look into it and tell me what you think.
Okay.
All right? And if it's something really important, get Mr. Graham to put it in writing what he thinks.
Okay.
Okay?
Alrighty.
Because it may be something that's come to your attention that you think may be important and may have an impact on you or others in a non-constructive manner. And you might want to head that off before it takes root.
Absolutely.
Because when something takes root on a job, it usually they say, well, this is what we've always done, and we're going to continue to do it that way, even though it's something that never should have been done in the first place.
In the first place, right. All right, down the stretch. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go, and you can download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. The call-in line is still open, 1-877-932-9766. Again, you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. All that courtesy of Talktainment Radio. That is radio the way it should be heard. You're listening to Mr. Neely Fuller, the author of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. We've been quoting from and reading from the Revised Expanded Edition. And while we're here, Mr. Fuller, could you say just a minute or two on how we can get the book or books?
The book that we have been reading from is called The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. That's a long title, but there is a complementary title, a supplementary title, you might say, textbook, more explicit title, textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of white supremacy. That's what it's addressed to. And the victims of white supremacy is any person classified as non-white. If you got color in your skin, black, brown, red, yellow, tan, beige, anybody, if you are classified by the white supremacists, and they do the classifying as being non-white, then you come under that victimization category, because the system of white supremacy is designed to produce victims. Now, it doesn't include all white people who practice. That's not saying that all white people practice white supremacy, but those who do. And those who do are more powerful and smarter than those who don't. Otherwise, logically speaking, there would be no such thing as white supremacy.
Yes, sir.
So this book is designed to be addressed to what the victims can do as individual persons on a day-to-day basis in all areas of activity. You can get the book by going to producejustice.com.
Oh, man.
That's producejustice.com.
You know, you really have a beautiful radio voice, Mr. Fuller. I just love to hear it. Anyway, exclusive to TalkTainmentRadio.com. Here we go. This is from the Gmails from Dr. Jackson. He says this, Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller, how do you feel about the Second Amendment rights as they pertain to people of color? And do you see going to the gun range / learning to shoot as a constructive behavior? Quickly, Second Amendment rights, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's the Second Amendment right. Mr. Fuller?
Well, I have been to ranges in military and whatnot, mostly, and I have fired firearms of different types, and I have owned firearms, and I think that a person should be able to use any kind of tools, just like you use a fork or a knife. These are tools to do whatever job needs to be done. And if you happen to have access to a firearm that you can use legally and whatnot to defend yourself, and you should know how to use that firearm if that's what's required to repel non-just, non-constructive aggression. You learn to do anything, whether you have these tools or not. You learn how to use them in case you have to, because there's no telling when you might have to. I mean, people in the olden days and whatnot, when they left their huts and whatnot, and even some places now in the world, I mean, you go wandering down the road, I mean, and the next thing you know, you're looking at a bear. All right. And you might have a rifle, say, but you're carrying this rifle from one place to another to a person, say, that who is the owner of the rifle. You don't know how to use the rifle, but you have the rifle in your possession. Now, here's an occasion where you're walking down a road, I mean, somewhere on the continent, or on some continent where they have bears, and here is a bear that's hungry, and this bear is eyeing you for a meal. And the bear is slowly creeping up on you, discerning you whether or not you're edible, and you have a rifle that you can't use. All you know how to do is run, and good luck with that. There are no trees around and no place to hide.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so you might just think about, maybe you should have learned to use that rifle that you have right there in your hand, that high-powered rifle, say .270 caliber. I mean, with about 7 cartridges in it, maybe 5 and whatnot. That will actually dissuade that bear from doing any harm to you. Once you shoot it a couple of times, he might be inclined to go in another direction because he will feel pain.
Yes.
The bear will feel that.
So is this constructive behavior? Do you?
Yes, there you go. I mean, you know, you have a choice here. You don't, you know, if you can stay out of the bear's way, well, then do so. But chances are a hungry bear is going to look at something that's edible, and that something edible just might be you. And I don't think you will agree with that proposition. So if you are able to, in answer to the question,
yes, sir,
to use any kind of tool that other people use to repel aggression of any kind, it might behoove you to learn how to use those tools.
Okay. From the Gmails, it says this. Greetings, Mr. Fuller. I have heard Mr. Fuller state the system of racism and white supremacy was built on the model of the system of royalty, the European version. Is it possible for the system of racism and white supremacy to crumble due to being built on the system of royalty?
Is it possible for the system of racism to have been built?
Is it possible for the system of racism, white supremacy to crumble due to being built on the system of royalty?
Yes, all systems that are built, regardless of what they were built on, systems, arrangements, all it is an arrangement between people. It's like a forced contract, you know, like Luca Brasi in The Godfather. I mean, you know, he forced a contract, reportedly in the movie, by a gun to somebody's head. Or you can have a contract that's made that's not forced. There's people that sit down and it's all a handshake. I mean, there's no force involved and whatnot. So the system of racism is just another contract, but it's a forced contract. So therefore, it's an arrangement between people that people are now involved in, the people all over the planet, either directly or indirectly. But we should have a better contract, and that contract should be a system of justice. So, yes.
Thank you, Ed.
Yes, the answer to the question, was the system based on royalty? Yes, because all royalty is based on someone telling somebody else what to do.
Okay.
All right? And so the white supremacists came up with this type of royalty that wasn't agreed on by the people who were made victims of it, because it was done by force and is maintained by force.
Okay.
Brute force and also deception. Deception is
right.
a form of violence if it's designed to harm someone unjustly.
Okay. Then he says, I come to this conclusion since the system of royalty does not share the spoils of war, resources, land, wealth, etc., with all white people. The system of racism, white supremacy also does not share the spoils of war with all white people. Mr. Fuller, what will happen when white victim of racism, white supremacy, wake up?
What will happen when white victims of racism?
This is what it says. What will happen when white victims of racism, white supremacy, wake up?
Oh, well, white people in the system of white supremacy are not victims of white supremacy.
Okay.
They might be victims of mistreatment.
Okay.
Maybe that's just like, all white people are forced to be partners in the enterprise of white supremacy.
Okay.
I mean, so you might say forced or enticed. I use the word enticed.
Enticed.
Because every white person has a choice. Are they going to participate in the system of white supremacy or not? And any white person who doesn't participate in the system of white supremacy immediately comes under the wrath of the people who are already members of the family, you might say. It's like being a member of a criminal enterprise. You don't go against the family. And if you do, you feel their wrath. But that's a business deal.
Yeah.
You're breaking your partnership off. All right?
Yeah.
And there are fights among, just like there was the best example that comes to mind is something that was called in the Northwestern Hemisphere the so-called Civil War.
Okay.
There's no such thing as a Civil War, but that's what they called it.
That's what they called it, right?
No such thing as a civilized war, but they called that. But what was that about? That was about white people arguing with themselves about how they're going to handle their victims.
Yeah.
Meaning the black people.
Okay, well, you know what that means when you hear the music. It means it's time to go.